Have you seen how busy the roads are in Mario Kart World? Like, this bridge in particular basically always has a traffic jam that lasts for like half the day or so. And I blame Peach. That's right, I'm blaming the government for this one, because they have obviously lowered the standards required to get a driver's license in the Mushroom Kingdom. Like, seriously, the licensure inflation on display here is ridiculous. Never before have we seen such a wide variety of random Mario enemies given the ability to drive. Even Goombas are driving. Goombas! They don't even have hands! And yet, here they are, on our roads. And I wonder, are they driving safely? So today we are determining just that. We are going to rank every Mario Kart World character based on how safe of a driver they are. Now you may be wondering, CMeeCraft, how are we going to do this? Is the safety of a driver not completely based on the person playing as them? Well, you may think that, but no, we've got hints here, specifically in regards to animations. Who's looking both ways at an intersection? Who's got their hands at 10 and 2? And most importantly, what we're going to be basing our ranking on today, who can reverse their vehicle the safest? In order to be as objective as possible in this ranking, I decided to consult what may be the absolute authority in safe driving, WikiHow. Yes, apparently they have an article on how to reverse a vehicle safely, which, just as an aside, I think it is a public safety hazard that this article exists, because quite frankly, if you have to look up the WikiHow article on how to reverse your vehicle, I don't want you on the roads. But it's useful for us today, so we'll use it regardless. Now, based on this article, I was able to draw out a few key factors we'll be looking for as we examine our characters to see who is reversing the safest. Firstly, and most obviously, we want to make sure that they are actually turning around and looking where they're going. If they are not turning their head and do not see where they're going, then that is unsafe and I do not want to get in the car with them. Secondly, are they maintaining control of the steering wheel as they do so? You know, you don't necessarily need two hands on, but I'd better see one hand very securely on that steering wheel while you're backing up, alright? Thirdly, WikiHow recommends leaning towards the passenger side to look out the back window of your vehicle as you're backing up. Now that obviously isn't very applicable here because the go-karts don't have a passenger side, they're single-seater vehicles. But one thing that is applicable is that WikiHow recommends resting your arm on something to get some stability here, which I think is generally a good idea. You don't just be flailing around here, you know? You want to have a good anchor point. And so we're going to be looking out for that too. Probably one of the less important of our factors, but definitely something to consider. Finally, we'll be looking out for any miscellaneous behaviors that are either going to be good or detrimental that various characters may or may not possess. Now, as for the rankings, here we go. As you can see, I've split our tier list into 5 tiers, with the top tier being safer than a human. In this case, I literally actually mean it. It's not just AI marketing hype. To get to this tier, they're going to need to do something incredible that helps with their vehicle's safety. Our second tier is they can drive. Now, this is not me literally just saying they possess the ability to drive. This is more so if I was in a situation where the two of us were having to get to somewhere and carpool, I'm okay with them driving. That'd be fine with me. The third tier is the opposite of that. If we're in a carpool situation, I'd rather be the one driving. It's not a deal breaker if they are really insistent on it, but I'm not quite trusting them. Our fourth tier is revoke their license. They do not know how to drive properly, and they're going to get into a fender bender. And our fifth tier is they're going to kill someone. They are driving so unsafely that someone is going to lose their lives eventually if we allow them to stay on the road. Hopefully none of our characters get here, but I wouldn't get my hopes up. So let's get into this. We've brought all of our characters here to a parking lot where they can safely show off their skills, utilizing the Real Racer, which seems like a decent vehicle choice to me. Anyway, first up is Baby Daisy. Honestly, to start off with, this is pretty textbook. She's getting her head and eyes around, and she's anchoring her elbow accordingly on the back of the seat. No notes here. Baby Daisy is going in the they can drive tier. Next up is Baby Luigi, and honestly, this is a pretty similar performance as Baby Daisy. He's definitely getting his head around. It's harder to tell with the eyes because of the art style difference, but I think he's getting his eyes around, and he's anchoring that elbow on the back seat perfectly. So, Baby Luigi is also going in the they can drive tier. Now we've got Baby Mario, and he drives exactly like Baby Luigi, so yet again, he's going in the they can drive tier. And Baby Peach is maintaining the trend of baby competence in the realms of driving. She is also going in the they can drive tier. Now, Baby Rosalina's outfit is questionable, to say the least, given the sleeve situation, but in terms of her actual driving technique, it's perfectly fine, except for the fact that when she's turning a certain direction, she looks over her right shoulder, which involves looking through the eye that her bang is, like, entirely covering, which, that's not safe, I'm sorry. So between the outfit and the hairstyle, I'm sorry, but Baby Rosalina, I'd rather drive if we're going somewhere, okay? No offense, but I'd rather drive. Next up is Birdo, and she's definitely getting her head and eyes around, but she's not really getting a good anchor to support herself here, so I don't think I'd feel unsafe if she were driving, but honestly, I'd rather drive. Now as for Bowser Jr., he's getting his head and eyes around, which you love to see, getting a decent enough anchor with his elbow, and he's turning his torso, not just his neck, so it's a more stable and comfortable position to maintain long term. And so Bowser Jr., he can drive. Now as for Bowser, let me just say his son clearly didn't get his driving skills from his old man. He's only turning his head about 90 degrees and relying on his eyes to get the rest of the way, which isn't ideal. And he's not even making an attempt to anchor his arm at all. Like, he's just doing this, which that's not safe. Look, given his political influence, this will never happen, but honestly, I think we should maybe revoke his license. Now, Cataquack is interesting. I'm not going to dock Cataquack points for not having an arm to rest on the seat, but I might dock points for only turning 45 degrees when you're trying to reverse. But it is worth noting, if we assume this green circle on the side of Cataquack is its eye, then it's gotten its eye turned all the way around to the back, so honestly, given that, I think they can drive. Charging Chuck is driving around in a football helmet, which might be inadvisable, but I'm not here to judge his clothing choices, I'm here to judge driving. He is twisting his body around and making an attempt at a decent anchor with his elbow. He just is a bit tall for this particular vehicle for that to be effective. But again, he's doing a Bowser sort of situation where he's only turning his head 90 degrees and counting on his eyes to do the rest of the work. And I'm not going to refuse to get in the car with him when he's doing that, but I'd rather drive. Cheep Cheep turns his body about, not even 45, more like 35 degrees, and stares up at the heavens. Which is where he's going to get all of us after he crashes. This is ridiculous. He's going to get someone killed. Coin Coffer turns 90 degrees and then counts on his eyes to do the rest of the work, which I already don't love, but what I don't love even more is he turns his entire body 90 degrees. This is no way to drive. He's looking where he's going, so I'm not going to say he's going to get someone killed, but we need to revoke his license. Conqueror is definitely getting a bit more than 90 degree rotation. I would have thought he could do a little better with such a long neck, but what do I know? Unfortunately, his sunglasses are obscuring whether or not his eyes are doing enough work to actually make this safe. So no offense, but I'd rather drive. Cow turns her head 45 degrees, makes no attempt to anchor herself, and is going to get everyone in the vehicle killed. Now I've got Daisy, and thank goodness, finally another competent driver. We have head around, we've got eyes around, we've got a good anchor point. This is someone who I would definitely let drive me around. Donkey Kong is getting his head and eyes around admirably, but I'd like to see a better anchor point for his free arm. So I don't think my life would be in danger if he were driving, but honestly, I'd rather drive. Dolphin is floating above the vehicle. He is turning a little more than 90 degrees and using his eyes to get the rest of the way, but there's no anchor point anywhere, so obviously he's making it work to some degree, so I'm not going to say he's going to get anyone killed, but revoke his license, please. Dry Bones is getting his head and eyes around, but he's not really trying hard enough for that anchor point, so ultimately, I don't think he's an active danger to those around him, but I'd rather drive. Fishbone is only making about a 55 to 60 degree turn of his head, but his eyes do seem to maybe be able to see out the side, but that might just be because he's a skeleton and has no flesh blocking the sides of his eye sockets. Honestly, between that uncertainty and the floating and the fact that he's already deceased, so who knows, maybe that happened in an auto accident, he's gonna get someone killed. Goomba's looking about 80 degrees to the side and is using his peripheral vision, but honestly, I don't think that's enough. Revoke his license, please. Hammer Bro is only turning his head about 90 degrees and doesn't really have a great anchor point, so I say revoke their license. King Boo literally just turns his whole body 90 degrees. Now look, I get he's dead, so he doesn't really have to worry that much about safety, but the rest of us do it, he's gonna get someone killed out there. As for Koopa Troopa, his anchor point is pretty weak, but he makes up for it with a very strong head turn. Ultimately, I'd say those 2 points cancel each other out, and while I'm not going to be worrying about getting my affairs in order when I get into his car, I'd still rather drive. Lakitu gets his head and eyes around perfectly fine, but I do find his anchor point a little anemic, so he's not a terrible driver, but I'd rather drive. Luigi, on the other hand, has a solid anchor point, but I'm really not a fan of the turn head 90 degrees and just rely on the eyes to get the rest of the way, so shockingly, he's going to have to go underneath his baby self because I'd rather drive. And Mario turns his head maybe a little more than 90 degrees, but his anchor point is horrible. I'm sorry to say, but we gotta revoke his license. Monty Mole to me looks like he's turning about 60 degrees to the side, looking into the middle distance, and waiting for the inevitable death that's going to claim him once he runs into someone. Well, this is a new one. Nabbit is getting his head around okay, and honestly his anchor point is a little weak, but he's like not using his eyes at all, so until he can learn to use all the muscles in his skull, we're revoking his license. Parabootybud does get his eyes around, but he's also turned his entire body exactly 90 degrees, which is just bad form. Certainly not worthy of being licensed to drive, that's for sure. Pauline, on the other hand, clearly knows what she's doing. We see the eyes and the head around, we see a decent anchor, and she's slim enough in build that we can actually see her gripping onto the wheel as well. A textbook performance if I've seen one, and yeah, if we're going somewhere, she can drive. And with Peach, it is more of the same. Head around, eyes around, decent anchor, perfect job. If we're going somewhere, she can drive. Peepa subscribes to the school of thought that says you turn your whole body 90 degrees to reverse. But at least he's getting his eyes around, so I'll take what I can get. And what I can get is suspending his license. Penguin is interesting because normally I like to see the head turned a little more, but given the position of his eyes on his head, I actually think this is fine. And he's making a decent enough attempt at an anchor point, so I think the actual execution is lacking a little, but I like the spirit. He seems very conscientious, so I'd say he can drive. Pianta is turning his head around 50, 60 degrees and making an attempt at an anchor point, but look at his pupils. Look at where he's looking. He's not actually making an attempt to look behind him. So ultimately, I'd say he's capable of driving safely, but just chooses not to. Which means we have unlocked a new tier, Criminal Negligence. So the piranha plant is turning its head a little less than 90 degrees to the side, and it is using its leaf as an anchor point, but I don't know where its eyes are. So yeah, I'm not really sure if I'm qualified to pass judgment here. So I think I'm forced to make a new tier here. Get a vision test and then maybe we can rank you properly. Okay, now we're talking here. Pokey is turning their head 180 degrees here for maximum vision going in reverse. And it was only the top 2 balls that turned, so the driving ball is still perfectly in the correct position. That amount of flexibility clearly makes Pokey safer than a human. Rocky Wrench is yet another proponent of the classic stare up into the sky and just hope you don't hit something method of driving. Clearly they're gonna get someone killed. Rosalina is getting her head and eyes around and has a decent enough anchor point, but yet again, just like with her baby self, if she looks over her right shoulder, her bangs are getting way in the way. So I don't doubt her abilities, but I'd rather drive. Shy Guy's getting a 90-degree head turn and is using his stubby little arm as an anchor point, but I don't think that mask allows for very good peripheral vision. I'll give him some benefit of the doubt and say that we only need to revoke his license and not that he's actually gonna kill someone, but Sidestepper's turned his head around 75 degrees or so, but I'm not really seeing much peripheral vision and his hands aren't even on the steering wheel, so I think we might have another character guilty of criminal negligence. Snowman is turning his head a little more than most, but I would like to see those pupils get around him a bit better, though I won't fault him for not having hands. Ultimately, I'd rather drive. Especially in the summer. Now Spike here is making an effort. We have the eyes around, we've got a good anchor on the elbow, though I would like to see his head turn a little more than 90 degrees ideally. I won't feel unsafe if he's the one driving, but I'd rather drive. Stingbee has decided it's acceptable to glance like 20 degrees to the left. That is clearly going to get someone killed. Swoop is turning his head about 90 degrees to the left, which normally you'd think I would say, okay, well, I revoked the license or I'd rather drive or something. But here's the deal, Swoop actually has hands. Unlike some of these other guys that I've given a pass for not having hands. So the fact that Swoop is more invested in just doing this than actually driving safely, I'm sorry, but it's criminal negligence. You can't be so invested in your self-love, self-hugs that you're endangering other people. And then we have Toad, who clearly knows what he's doing. He's got the head around, he's got the eyes around, he's got a perfect anchor point. If we're going somewhere and he's driving, that is fine by me. And Toadette drives just like our man, which means I'm cool with her driving me anytime. Waluigi's getting a decent anchor point and certainly getting his eyes around, but again, I'd prefer to see just a little more head motion than what he's got going on here. I don't think he's endangering anyone necessarily, but I'd rather drive. Wario, on the other hand, I don't know, maybe he's just too fat to turn all the way around, but I do not like what I'm seeing here. Someone revoke this man's license, please. Following Wiggler's gaze, I don't think he's looking behind him. Looks to me like he's looking to something off on the side. You can't get distracted so easily if you're driving a motor vehicle, so in my book, that's criminal negligence. And finally we got Yoshi, who we just pulled out from his shift at Yoshi's to do this driving test. He loves it, I'm sure. But what I love is he's getting his head around, getting his eyes around, good anchor point, textbook driving, just what I would expect from such a professional. I'd let him drive for DoorDash anytime. And that is our ranking. So in summary, Pokey is safer than a human. Baby Daisy, Baby Luigi, Baby Mario, Baby Peach, Bowser Jr., Cataquack, Daisy, Pauline, Peach, Penguin, Toad, Toadette, and Yoshi can drive perfectly fine. Baby Rosalina, Birdo, Chargin' Chuck, Conk Donkey Kong, Dry Bones, Koopa Troopa, Lakitu, Luigi, Rosalina, Snowman, Spike, and Waluigi can drive okay, but honestly in most cases where we're going together, I'd rather drive. Bowser, Corncoffer, Dolphin, Goomba, Hammerbro, Mario, Nabbit, Parabittybud, Peepa, Shy Guy, and Wario should honestly have their licenses revoked. Cheep Cheep, Cow, Fishbone, King Boo, Monty Mole, Rocky Wrench, and Stingbee are honestly so terrible at driving that they are going to get someone killed if we allow them to continue. Piranha Plant needs to get a vision test before I'm comfortable licensing him. And Pianta, Sidestepper, Swoop, and Wiggler drive so recklessly that they are guilty of criminal negligence. But what do you think? Did I get this ranking right or wrong? Is there anyone who definitely needs their license revoked, or anyone you're willing to bat for to make sure they don't lose their driving privileges? I would love to hear it in the comments. Additionally, if you want even more fun, unique Mario Kart content, I'm currently running a series on this channel called Mario Kart Mission Mode, in which I've challenged 4 YouTubers to race against each other to complete a bunch of different missions in Mario Kart World's free roam mode the fastest. It is pretty fun, so you might want to check that out. And in general, if you like what I'm doing here, subscribe and check out the channel. There's probably a whole bunch there that you will enjoy. And before I go, let me thank my patrons who got access to this video early. I'd especially like to thank my $15 tier patrons, Alex Oxwing and Ash Says. But anyways, until next time, I've been CMeeCraft, and I'll catch you in the next video. Goodbye.